Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Taylor, and today we're finally going to get started on tearing apart the 454 Chevrolet Big Block for my 1970 El Camino. In the past video, you guys saw that I just removed the whole entire engine and put the car away for a little while we get started on this project. Here's the engine. I've got it rotated to the side right now to drain the residual coolant out of the water pump, and we're going to get started today. We're going to tear it all the way down to the short block, pull the whole front dress off, the timing cover. We'll get to the oil pan at some point too, because I am going to put a new pan on it. But first things first, I'll tear off the intake manifold and the two cylinder heads, and we'll see what we're working with when we get it apart. So I've got this whole thing unbolted now, and I'm going to try to just pry it up from the water neck here. Oh, that was easy. See what's going on under here. Ooh, let's see, I'm gonna have to grab the bucket. All right, with the manifold off, just doing a initial inspection here. It looks very clean in here. This coolant was just from pulling the manifold off where the water jacket comes in. So that's no big deal. Everything looks to be in really good shape. Not that it really matters, because we are going to be replacing this cam and these lifters, and we will need new push rods as well. I believe these were some comp 3/8 hardened push rods, and I put them in. So anyways, it all looks good, nothing out of the ordinary. Right now, I'm gonna start working on removing this head. I'll remove all the rockers and push rods, and then we'll start unbolting this head. All right guys, so to remove the rockers first, I'm gonna have to remove these. They're actually called poly locks. They're 5/8 on the outside, and then they have a little locking Allen key on the inside, and that's to ensure that they don't come untorqued, you know, when the engine's running. So I'm gonna knock all these out and start pulling these off. All right guys, all of the poly locks are removed, and the rockers literally just pull off of their studs like this. These are comp roller rockers that I installed on here back when I built this motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and organize these all in a little box, and then we'll get down to actually removing the head bolts. All right, pulling the push rods out now. This is your exhaust valve and your intake valve. They're different lengths. So you can see the intake valve is shorter. Exhaust is longer, and it's longer because it sits further away on the head, right near the exhaust chamber on the head. So pull all these out and get this head taken off. All right guys, and one note here, I have all of the bolts out of the head except for one right here in the center. All of these lower bolts thread into the water jacket, and a lot of coolant will come out of those. So I just had a little bit coming out, which I had this bucket over here for, and I've got this big drain pan now. I'm going to rotate the engine this way, dump as much out of there as I can, and then flip it right side up again and pull the head off. Well, I was happy I made maybe only a 10% mess out of the 90% that came out of there, so that was pretty good. I've got that last bolt out now, so the head is solely sitting on this engine with the dowel pins. Now I'm going to go ahead and just try to crack this loose and walk it to the other side of the garage. With the head pulled off, you can see the surface here. The pistons definitely have a little buildup on them. Probably not tuned as good as it could be, so I'm gonna have to knock all that stuff down. But the cylinder walls look great. Let me get my light going here for you so you can see. Still got a lot of cross hatching in the cylinders. Very smooth, so I'm happy with that. At least I was able to put this engine together without it grenading. Again, this was the first engine I ever built, so I am kind of impressed that 6 years later, I'm here and it still looks pretty good inside, despite some of this carbon buildup. So I'll knock all that stuff down before I set the new heads on, obviously, just to clean it all up, but we're looking good on this side. So essentially, I'm just gonna work my way to the other side and repeat that whole process that you just saw, and I'll tear this thing right down to the short block. So I'll catch up with you after I get that other cylinder head removed, and we'll start tearing some more stuff off from there. All right, well, I got the other cylinder head pulled off and everything looks excellent. I'm really impressed. Hopefully you can see this here. I mean, there's still a lot of nice cross hatching in here, and there's virtually zero bore wear in here. I mean, these things are just, I mean, it really looks like this thing was just assembled. I don't even know, honestly, how many miles could be on this thing, because in the past 12 years that I've owned this car, the odometer has never worked. It's just read like 3,014 for as long as I've had it. So of all the things I've ever done, I never fixed that to keep track of actually how many miles are on this. But I mean, it looks killer. So I have zero complaints, and I think this motor is going to last a whole lot longer when we get it all put back together. So I will clean all these up. This, you know, build up is kind of just from maybe not so good tuning on my part. Basically, most of the time that I've ever worked on this motor, it was just tuning it by ear, setting the timing, you know, just to kind of textbook specs. So when I do put the motor back in, I am going to install a wideband O2 sensor in the exhaust. That way I can better understand how the motor's running as far as jetting is concerned, power valves, all the stuff with the carburetor, and then, you know, timing as well. So we'll really have some good knowledge of air fuel, and this thing's just gonna run a whole lot better. So we're pretty much on the home stretch here. I'm gonna pull this water pump off. I'll pull the crank pulleys off. Unfortunately, I don't have a harmonic balancer puller, so I'll have to go and rent one of those from O'Reilly just to pull that off of there so that I can get the front cover off. I'm gonna pull the starter off and the engine mounts while I'm at it, and I will be replacing all of the freeze out plugs. These, you know, I installed 17 years old with just a back end of a socket, and I know some of them probably aren't seated right. They probably, I think on the other side especially, they've been weeping a little bit of coolant for quite a while. You can see some trails running down. So I'm gonna pull all of these out, replace them with new ones, and I'm going to put a light bead of like gasket sealer on them just to really make sure they're secure. But all in all, really not bad. I was a little scared that I was maybe gonna find something not good and maybe I was gonna have to get some machine work done, but this thing just looks awesome. So we'll get back to the work here. Ooh, that thing's on there. Woo. Well, this is the last thing that could be full of coolant that we're dealing with, so hopefully it doesn't make too much of a mess. Oh. That was lucky, man. Damn, didn't make any mess. That's great. Well, there's that. Moving right along, I have the engine mount removed on this side, and on the other side, I've got the starter off. I need to clean that up, do it at some other point. But I'm getting ready to pull the lifters out. Now, one thing to note, this is a hydraulic flat tappet cam. And when you break the cam in, there's a 20-minute or so critical break-in period where you run the engine anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 RPM, and that mates each lifter to the actual cam lobe that it rides on. Now, if I were keeping this cam, thinking I might use it again someday in this block, I would have to save each lifter and note which lifter bore it came out of in this lifter valley. But this camshaft can be bought on Summit. I think you can buy a cam and lifter set for maybe like $199, right around 200 bucks. And I don't really have any interest in keeping this. I don't want to put it in a different motor just for the sake of potentially wearing it flat, given that the lifter bores would be different. So I'm just going to junk these, so I'm not going to keep track of them. But that's something that you should take into account if you are switching a cam and are thinking about keeping it around. All the lifters are out. Everything is super clean. Even the lifter bores are all really nice and crosshatched still. I got the oil filter off, so now we're just going to invert this thing and start pulling the oil pan off. Oh. Well, just when you thought you had all the coolant out, there's more. Now with the engine flipped over, you can see a big glaring issue, and that is the wear to the oil pan. This really upset me when I built this car, or built this engine rather, and put it in the car because I had limited money and limited time, because I actually drove this to high school every day, and it took me like a month to get it all back together, and I was having to figure out rides to school and whatnot. So when I put this engine in, I had no idea that the pan wasn't going to fit right. This is a Summit Racing pan. It was actually a very nice pan. It's got a nice deep sump. It's a 6-quart pan. There's a windage tray, trap door, all this nice trick stuff inside. And I painted it up, threw it on the engine, threw it in the car, and didn't even notice that it was hitting until after it was basically running. And I was just like devastated at the time. So I came in here and bashed in these corners with a big socket because it was hitting the steering cross member, which you can see right here and right here. And then basically for the past 6 years and however many miles this car has on it, the pan was literally sitting on the cross member. So that Summit Racing pan was just the biggest pile of junk. I would recommend never buying a Summit pan again. I mean, look at how bad the wear is on this. Basically, that could have sprung a pinhole pretty much at any time. You can see the direction that the motor torqued. It basically just flattened out this entire corner. So it's probably good I did this before anything got worse. All the pan bolts are out, and we'll see if we can break this thing loose off of here. There we go. Just gonna flip it right away. Huh. Pretty good. So I'll show you what I mean in here. This pan, you know, when it showed up, I thought it was great because it had this nice windage tray and there's a trap door down by the sump. So I thought, oh man, this is killer, is a good deal, but when it's resting on your cross member like that, it is sure to fail at some point or another. Had I driven this car more than I did the past several years, I'm sure it would have failed on me. So we are going to be replacing this. Now this is a 2-bolt main block, but I have ARP main studs and ARP connecting rod bolts, so it's very sturdy for a 2-bolt. A lot of drag race guys claim that, you know, they've spun 2-bolt main 454s up to 7,000 down the drag strip for hundreds of runs and never had any issues. So I'm not going to be making any changes to the bottom end of this. We're only doing the pan and the pickup, and then we'll flip it over, throw all of our heads on and stuff. But everything is looking excellent under here. I had this balanced as well, so this is a pretty nice bottom end. But you can see down in here, everything looks to be in awesome shape, and you see a lot of cross hatching on the cylinder walls at the bottom here too. So nothing has ever thought about letting go. The last things that I'm going to do to this, which I'll complete off camera, is just pulling the harmonic balancer off in the front cover, and then I'll be able to get at the camshaft and the cam gears. But that is where we're going to stop today. Alright guys, well that will conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We made quite a bit of progress today on the teardown of this engine, and once I get it all cleaned up again, we'll be ready to start bolting on all the shiny new stuff, which is a lot more fun than what we just did. But if you guys enjoyed what you saw here today, please give the video a big thumbs up for me and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more automotive content like this and see this El Camino come to life here within the next few episodes with hopefully 600 horsepower big block Chevrolet. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next video.